The narcissist believes their own fantasies. They believe their own fantasies, and they want you to live in that fantasy with them. I think the reason my narcissist had so much disdain for me was because I could see through his mask. He would pass himself off as a great sea captain who'd been on many great sea adventures, Yarg. The truth of the matter is this, again, it never happened. He did have sailboats. I'd keep them parked by the dock, and he would take them out, do a circle, and go, great sea trials. But, maybe half a mile off the coast, do a couple circles, come back around. And it seemed like he was more interested in priding himself about his great sea adventures than he was actually going out and sailing. He was always drunk, but he would tell everybody. So like when I'd see his wife saying, oh, he's been on great sea adventures. When I was dumped and it was discarded, I should say, as a, quote, friend. Not that they have any. Although the smear campaign had to happen because, he had to ruin my image to make sure that the news supply, his pet monkey wife, well, she's an idiot, I've explained it in other videos, would never communicate with me, would hate me before she ever knew it, before she ever even knew me. And the reason he had to set that up was because on her Facebook and stuff, she was posting, oh, he's been on great sea adventures up and down the Gulf Coast for several years, going on great adventures, commanding the high seas. The truth of the matter is it never happened. And he couldn't have me telling her that he never actually did what he said he did. But I had seen through the mask. I was the bad guy. I had to be punished and discarded. And I had to get out of there. He had to ruin me so that, which didn't happen, but so I could never, they don't want the jig to be up. So I eventually his new supply will see through the mask, or she might not, but he'll get bored and there'll be some new supply. She'll be kicked to the curb. They'll get new supply. Now, she's an narc too, like I said, so they might milk at each other for a little while, but point is that when they make up these fantasies like I'm a great scientist, that was the one I always liked. More than the sea captain was the great scientist. I have many great scientific discoveries like Medbird, Carl Sagan, and Isaac Asimov, Yarg. That never happened. Like I said, the guy never finished a degree, which is okay. Not everybody who's educated has degrees. Degrees are overrated, really, in a sense. But the thing was, he had no will or passion to actually learn anything. Narcissists are people of no substance at all. They're all just about their image. So it's not about actually studying the history of science. I would suggest courses by Dr. Lawrence Principe through the great courses. He was a philosopher and historian of science through Johns Hopkins University, or the philosophy of science. Again, the great courses has some really good stuff. There's the old stuff by like the Introduction to the History of Science by Walter Libby. You can get that free on Kindle. There's all sorts of sources. This guy didn't want to study. He wasn't interested in actually studying the history of science and being a great scientist or doing any experiments or getting a job as a scientist. It was always about characters. He loved the Isaac Asimov science fiction books. I'm not saying everything's wrong with science fiction, but oops, sorry, got the camera. And there's nothing wrong with certain movies. Some movies are pretty vile, and I would suggest stay away from them, and they're kind of ignorant too. There's nothing wrong with a good movie, a good book, or a good story, but when you can't live outside of the fantasy of that. I've noticed that I've talked to several people. A lot of narcissists really like movies, and I think a lot of people like movies, and we say it's a form of escapism. And in a lot of cases, it's escapism. Sometimes we like a drama that we can relate to in life or a documentary. But the thing is, they love escapism, not for the same reason we do, where I've had a long work week, I'm exhausted, I want to get my mind a break and get it away, a little escapism. They escape it because real life is painful for them. And they have to face the fact that they're not the great sea captain that they say they are. They haven't been on these great spaces or sea adventures with all, great, Jimmy Buffett and Tristan Jones and on the high seas and all this crap that they're telling everybody. The truth of the matter is they're usually, alcoholics who play the same trumpet scale over and over again, fall off. They buy 5 or 6 sailboats to show you what a great sailor they are, but then they dry dock all these boats. They buy something like a West Sail on the coast, like a sailboat, but they never take it out but once, do a couple of turns and say, hey, you had a great adventures. The bottom line is real life ultimately at a subconscious level reminds them that they are not the gods that they want to be, that they need to be, that they have to believe to themselves that they are. So they can't face the fact that they're ordinary. Not that there's anything wrong with being ordinary. I'm a pretty ordinary guy. I live an ordinary life. I like my ordinary life. I like being ordinary. I've been able to do 5 million hobbies and travel, but I'm ordinary. I like being ordinary. I relate to ordinary people. but they can't handle that. They have to be special, unique, and so they create these fantasies in their head, and they only want to keep people around them that are actually going to sit there and feed that fantasy. I have been to outer space on great space travels. That was in one on here. I will travel through space and meet alien life forms and shake their hands like I did, and like I read in an Isaac Asimov fantasy book, Yarg. That makes me a great scientist. They can't differentiate between fantasy and reality. They have to live in the fantasy, and they can only be around people that buy that fantasy with them. And I think that my narc actually believed that I actually believed it. It doesn't matter what he thinks, but I think he actually thinks Ryan really thought I was a great space captain. Ryan thought I was a great sea adventurer, and that's why he kept me around. And then when he realizes maybe I'm not buying it anymore, he must be punished and discarded and then smeared, so that when I go to take advantage of this next person that I only keep around to help me fulfill my bullcrap fantasy stories in my own head that I have to administer to myself like a drug addict, he can't let her know that the gig is up. All right, and so they only want to keep people around that actually affirm that. If I say that I could beat up Mike Tyson, I darn well better have a wife that believes that I pretend that I can beat Mike Tyson, or at least will pretend to believe that I can beat Mike Tyson. If I say I am Superman, I'm actually Superman, but I don't want to intimidate people by my greatness, so I keep my plain clothes on to cover my costume. Everybody around me that I keep as a supply better believe that. Or, you're Superman, I won't tell anybody. Yarg, I am, and they have to do that. Because the minute they realize that maybe you're not Superman, maybe you actually, sit down when you poop, and maybe you bleed, and maybe you're not the Man of Steel, maybe you don't even have a cape. Yarg, there's the rage. So, they only want to keep people around who totally believe their fantasies, or pretend to believe their fantasies, or convince them that they believe their fantasies. They watch movies to escape into another world. They make up stories based on fictional characters, science fiction books, movies, authority figures. That's why they're always name dropping. He is like me. I am like him. The big one I see this guy is Sheldon Cooper. This guy's posting stuff about, I'm a great scientist like Sheldon Cooper, and he'll only keep people on his Facebook that will actually perpetually tell him, yeah, you're like Sheldon Cooper. You're a great physicist. I don't know if the guy's ever picked up a physics book in his life. But in his mind, he can't be him. I am Sheldon, you see? Great scientist, great scientific discovery, Yarg. And he has to live in that role. He hates me. You call him out on his bullcrap. It's fraud. Anyway, you better agree with all their scientific, but ultimately you'll get discarded. Jig will be up, or they'll just get bored. Not your fault. They're losers, but they're weirdos. But yeah, they're fighting dragons in their head. Anyway, have fun, guys.